Hey everybody, it's Jay here. I am currently working on a project for a client, which is a Chaos Space Marine Army. And one of the first things I'm working on today is the Khorne Berzerkers. And so what I'm planning to do today is show you how I paint them. Now I've already gotten started on the unit itself, but I've left one out so that we can walk through the process together. This is the prototype that I did yesterday, and I think it came out quite well, and so I'm just going to be following the lead that I set on this and do the rest just like that. So in the end we will end up with 12 guys that look like this. So to get started, I did a white primer on these models, and the reason I did that is mostly out of habit. Anytime I do reds, yellows, light greens, anything that's going to be a fairly transparent color, I tend to start with white. In this case it probably wasn't necessary, but I just figured I would let you know my thought process on this, and we'll go from there. So obviously I assembled these first and left off the backpacks and the shoulder pads. Shoulder pads are actually all mostly painted already. So yeah. Anyway, so assembly, white primer, and then my next step is going to be airbrushing the base coat. And for a base coat I'm using Khorne red. What else would you use on Khorne Berzerkers? You know, honestly though, this could almost be any red, because we're going to go right over that afterwards with a wash of Crimson, and it's a fairly overwhelming wash, and you're going to get more color from this than you do from this. So what color this base is really up to you, but you want to be on the darker side, and Khorne red is definitely on the darker side. So I'm going to go get the airbrush ready, and then we'll do a little airbrushing. For this step I'm going to be using my Grex Tritium airbrush. I've already mixed up the paint, and I'm just trying to lay down a nice base coat. Okay, this next step is really simple. We are going to liberally apply Crimson shade to the model. And it doesn't really matter if it's going onto places that are not going to be red. So don't worry about it, just put it all absolutely over everything. Slather it on, because this is essentially your shadow coat for the red. Whoops. Sorry about that. This is the shadow coat for the red, and so the goal here is to make sure that all the low points, all the depressions, all the folds, they all end up with a really, really dark red portion. I've seen this done with black as well. You could possibly use Nuln oil if you wanted to go really dark, but I find that Crimson gets very, very dark all on its own. And I like to stay away from black and white most of the time. So I'm not going to be Not going to be using that on this model. But feel free to do so on your own, and you may end up liking how that looks as well. Alright, let's take a look real quick. I think I've got it all over. Always double check, look at it from different angles. Make sure you didn't miss anything. There's nothing worse than doing a wash and then coming back later and going, oh, I missed a spot, because trying to get it to blend can be kind of tough. Alright, I think that's good. I'm going to let that dry. Alright, so the next step after the shade has dried is to layer our first color in. And the first layer I'm going to be using is Berzerkers Red. I just figured I'd point out that this is actually, so far, is the recommended colors from the Games Workshop website for doing Khorne Red. I am going to depart from that, though, after this step. But for now, we are going to stick with the recommended color. And what I'm going to do is just get it right in there. Obviously, I want to leave a shadow edge. That is, I don't want to cover all the way. I don't want to cover everything. That would sort of defeat the whole purpose of my first two steps. So the goal here is to sorry about that. The goal here is not full coverage. The goal is essentially to create the first step of highlighting. And so I'm not even using this at full strength. In a way, this is just the kind of foundation color for the brighter colors that will come after. You won't see much of this color when this is all said and done. I'm not going to worry about the bottom of the feet because I'm going to make that dirty later on, so I'm just going to leave that as is. Yes, I do use my thumbnail as a palette. I had actually considered naming my painting studio Thumbnail Palette Studios. part of it, not all of it, in order to begin the highlighting process. Now obviously, like with any shading, you kind of want to keep in mind where light is likely to hit. I try to do the halo of lighting, halo of light, where you think of the light as coming down from over the top of the model. And so that would mean that anything sort of under here would be darker than anything up here. So that is that's the thing that I keep in my head as I'm working on this. So for example, here on the back, where the armor slopes down, I might just leave that as is, and then add more up top and less down below to sort of get that shadow. Of course, you're not going to see too much of this, as there's going to be a backpack there, but the backpack does hang out pretty far off of the back on these guys. In fact, here you can kind of see that on this one. You still don't see too much of the back though. Alright, well, I'm going to go finish this up, and in fact I'll probably try and do a bunch on the other guys as well. One thing I want to point out, when I'm doing a unit as opposed to a single figure, I'll mix up my paints with a little bit of retarder. In this case, this is a golden acrylics retarder. I'll put a drop or two of this into the paint, so that this will keep for a long time. I don't have to worry about this drying out. I don't have to leave my pot open, which is constantly drying out the pot. So I can go to this little bit of paint for, you know, a couple of hours at least before I have to worry about doing another mix. So anyway, let me get some more painting done. I will come back and I'll show you this step when it is finished, and we'll move on to the next step. Alright, so for this next step, I'm going to be departing from the standard Citadel recommended color scheme, and I am going to use a Joe Sonia color called Naphthol Crimson, and that's the paint here. I've mixed it up with a little bit of retarder, a little bit of water to get a nice smooth paint. And the idea here is going to be to essentially follow up with the last colors that I did, and create a brighter highlight area. So essentially coming in somewhat from the Berzerkers red, which is over the top of our dark color, is not very bright. The recommended colors, I guess the primary reason I'm not using them is I don't have them. And I do have this, and I really like Naphthol Crimson. It's a very, very vivid red. Now, it is also a very, very transparent red, which means that although it's going to look brilliant when I first lay it down, as it dries, the darker reds underneath are going to show through and will make it less bright, which also means that I can go in several layers to bring it to the brightness that I want. And I'll get a fairly smooth transition. So actually right now I'm not being too careful about where this goes, because I know that in the end it's not going to alter the underlying color too much. That, and since I can't work as close as I normally do, well, it's hard to tell exactly where I want to put the paintbrush. It's one of the problems with trying to shoot video when you're painting. You kind of have to jump through some extra hoops that you wouldn't normally have to do. And it creates issues. Not a huge deal. But it does kind of alter the way you paint a little bit. I can also do this on the shoulder pads. I've actually already done this a bit on here, so this is really just brightening it up some. By the way, I don't always leave shoulder pads off on Space Marines. I'm sort of starting to lean in that direction as I find it easier to paint everything underneath them. You know, it's always just sort of whatever seems right for the project that you're doing. Obviously I'm switching back and forth between different models. I'm working on kind of a half dozen of them at the moment. So with each different step, you're probably going, hey wait, that's not the one that he was just working on, but it's in there somewhere. I just haven't been paying attention to which one I grab when I show the next step. Now I'm also going back for a second pass on this to give it a little stronger red, and this time I am trying to make more certain that the paint is going in a more sort of central area and not going all the way to the edges, not fully covering the last coat. And if you're kind of curious about the type of paint I'm using right now, I just recorded a review. Something I've been meaning to do for a while because I really enjoy using these paints, and I think other people might also enjoy them. And so the review was my finally getting around to telling everybody about them. Interesting thing I noticed as I was doing the review, or just before I did the review, and I mentioned this in the review as well, so this is sort of duplicate information if you've already watched that or if you're going to watch that. But this paint and another one, a green color that I have, the green one actually had a price tag from when I originally bought it in 2000. So this paint that I'm using right now is 12 years old, and yet it still works perfectly fine. 12 years old. Do you have any 12-year-old Citadel paints? If I look hard enough, I actually might. Back in my, I've got a box of some older paints that I haven't used in a while, but I think I may still have some things that are even older than that, because I used a number of Citadel colors on Starship Troopers, particularly their inks. I think I used the blue ink a lot on the kind of bug schmutz that went on to the various damaged Starship pieces. I don't even know if you can see this. I'm not paying attention to the monitor too much, so I'm only correcting now and again. Alright, I am going to get some more of this done with the camera out of the way. But here, actually, let's see. You can see how the red's popping a little bit more. So I'm going to go, again, get the camera out of the way, finish this guy, do the other 5, and then I will, I'll be back for the next step. Alright, so with the highlight red color done, I'm going to move on to another brighter highlight. And the color I'm using is this here, Naphthol Red Light, which you can see here, which is a very kind of orangey color, very deep orange. It's a very good highlight for that red. And as with many highlights, you're just going to be concentrating on leading edges. The purpose of this is really just to make the edges pop. I don't want to use too much because then it's going to turn the whole thing orange, and I don't want that. But luckily it is again a very transparent color, so as it dries it'll blend in quite well with the underlying red color. It's nice when your paint will sort of help do the work for you and keep you from having to jump through a lot of hoops to do something that should be should be simple, or is ideally simple. As you can see on the helmet ears, I'm just sort of touching the center of the red panels just to give it a little pop. Goal here is definitely just to add a little bit more depth, a little bit more visual interest, not to color the whole thing. You don't want to impact the red color with this. And then on the shoulder pads, I'm going to concentrate on the tops and draw it down towards the center. And it'll hopefully give a really nice warm glow to the shoulder pads. This is a little bit more orange than I'm using on the rest of it. And this is all going to be gold up here, so I'm just going to do just a touch. Inside the eyes here. Sorry that I keep bumping the camera. Alright, that's not too bad. I like where that is. So I think we're going to roll right into the next step. And that's going to be blocking in some of the other colors. And I'm going to start with gold. Now, I'm really happy with the new gold base color, which is Balthazar gold. So I'm going to start with that. And I'm just going to pull it right out of the pot this time. And this is going to go over carefully over everything that's going to be gold. I think that's pretty self-explanatory, so why don't I go finish that and then I'll come back. So the second stage of the gold is Gehenna's gold. This is a really nice pairing, these two colors. This makes a really good base color, and this is a really good highlight. When you're all said and done, you get something very nice. But here's the thing. Never try to start with this. Gehenna Gold does not cover very well. It highlights the Balthasar really very well, but does not work well on its own, does not play well with others. So just keep that in mind. So I'm just going to go over the Balthasar lightly, touch the rivets, hit the center points between the rivets. So essentially I'm going to end up with a shadow near the rivets, but then a highlight on and between the rivets. Some gold on my red. That's no good. One of my friends told me something one time that he said the mark of a true professional was somebody who was able to hide his mistakes. And I firmly believe that to be true, because at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what mistakes you made, as long as people don't see them. They'll just think that you're a brilliant painter and that you don't make mistakes, and you can tell them that, knowing, of course, that it is not true. You might notice that I also went ahead and painted the chains. I blocked in the black on the gloves, his holster, his bolt pistol. Looks like I need to go back over that. Let me show you the next step for the gold here, even though I'm not completely done, obviously. But I can do the next step on his helmet in a second here. So the next step involves Agrak's Earthshade. And I'm going to use this to help define the rivets and provide a little shadow. And the other thing you can do with this is to actually drop it into the edge here, and that'll help define the space between the red and the gold. You obviously don't want to get too much in there because it'll just muddy all that up. You don't want to do that. But since we're going for sort of blood red, the brown and the earth shade can work very well as a sort of final shade in the recesses. So if you want to take some extra time, you can really drop it in there. And create just a bit more contrast in the shadow areas. The shades are nice to work with like that because if you're careful with them, they're not very overwhelming. Inside, because it'd be nice if that was a bit darker in there as well. Alright, so now I'm going to go ahead and hit the rest of that. This may actually end up being, I think this is going to be the end of part 1 for this video, because I need to go in and bring the other models up to this level. This is still a client project and I still want to get it done, so I'm going to go do that and I will be back tomorrow, or actually possibly next week. Yeah, not right away, but that's it for now, so take care. I'll talk to you later.